Magnus Carlsen, still the world champion in chess, but that will change, of course, in the next couple of weeks. Yesterday won the title Tuesday on chess.com with a very performance. But one game that he played was really spectacular, was really special in my opinion, because in that game, Magnus Carlsen played without inaccuracies, mistakes, or blunders. He almost played like the machine. He almost played like the Stockfish engine, which is really wild, which is really crazy when you think about it, Hara, because this is Blitz chess. You have only 3 minutes on the clock, so really an epic performance here by Magnus Carlsen. So his opponent was Aram Hakobyan. He's a strong grandmaster from Armenia. Let's see now what happened. It was really, in my opinion, an instructive game. So Magnus opened with the move c4. Hakobyan response was g6, and now Magnus goes with e4, hopes to reach maybe the King's Indian structure. He's trying after bishop to g7 to get the move d4, but here Hakobyan plays the very important Adorian defense, and this I think is a great choice. You can also play, of course, c5, competing for the d4 square, but now if d4 happens, e takes d4, and after queen to d4, the queen after a couple of moves gets more exposed, and after knight to c6, knight to f6, of course, first you have to cover the diagonal. The queen will be kicked away from the center, so in my opinion, so far, a good defensive strategy here by Hakobyan. So in the game, knight to c3, Magnus is trying to occupy the weak d5 square, but also Hakobyan, we have to say, has chances around the square d4, because you have played c4, e4, which is of course creating spaces, but you're leaving also spaces behind. Now the d4 square is really the most vulnerable square now in white's position, and black should try to occupy it in the continuation of the game. So here in the continuation, knight to c6 with a normal idea, bishop to g7, knight to d4 here for black. And when it comes to potential outposts, so as I said, white is trying knight to d5, black is trying a knight to d4. Black should be even slightly better here, because after knight to d5, after a couple more moves, for instance, we play knight to d4 from black's perspective. The problem is after knight to d5, this knight can be always kicked away afterwards with the potential c6 move. So there's no really compact outpost for white around the square d4. On the other hand, black has realistic chances, I think, to jump with the knight on d4, because the knight cannot be attacked anymore by any pawns around the square. So g3 played by Magnus, bishop to g7, bishop to g2, d6, d3, knight from g to e7, and now knight from g to e2. We have a certain symmetry, but with a difference that we have here 3 pawns like this setup, and here, as I said, black has still the flexibility to play the move c6 and control the d5 score. Kingside Carlsen, and now f5. This is a good choice by Hakobyan. He's getting into ideas of the King's Indian defense. Of course, it's not the same, but like in the King's Indian, when you play this fianchetto, trying maybe to get the f4 goal. So Magnus plays now bishop to e3, and now Hakobyan plays, in my opinion, a slightly inaccurate move, bishop to e6. And it's really crazy that normal development is actually slightly inaccurate, because in my opinion, here black should simply continue with the move knight to d4. You have chances, as I said, around the square. If knight to d5 happens, still c6 as promised will probably happen then for black. So knight to d4 is a realistic chance. In my opinion, black would equalize the game immediately. A more aggressive way to the game, instead of this move knight to d4, is also a beautiful idea, f4, which is a more active approach, which is a sharper approach, because after g takes f4, you sacrifice a pawn. Now you jump with the knight on d4, and okay, probably white would continue with f takes e5, but now look at this. After d takes e5, the d file will open, and now there is also backward pawn on d3. Now after f4, we have even this opportunity, bishop to g4, pinning the knight on e2 further. And as I said, even if you jump in some of this line somehow with the knight on d5, c6 will come for black for sure. So as I said, bishop to e6 is a developing move, but actually, in my opinion, slightly too passive. You have to be aggressive now in the center with knight to d4 or f4. So Magnus goes now immediately with the move knight to d5. We have queen to d7, queen to d2, rook to f7, f3, and now rook to f8. Here Hakobyan is trying to get some activities on the f file. Rook from a to c1. We have now the move b6, and after move b4, now Hakobyan makes, I think, really his first really inaccuracy here. This was unnecessary. Now there was maybe here this chance to go with this move f4 immediately, but in my opinion, even if you don't play f4, you don't have to push your pawns here here on the queen side. You have to don't have to weaken the structure anymore, because our f4 g takes f4. Now again this idea, knight to d4, we sacrifice a pawn. Now we play knight to e2, queen to e2, and now after move d takes e5. Notice that black has here a beautiful activity. There are two backward pawns now. The d3 pawn, the f3 pawn is weak, so in my opinion this would be a playable position here for black. But a5 leads into complications, because after b5, knight to d8, bishop to g5. Now f4 is not coming with the tempo against the bishop. Now the bishop will not be attacked with this aggressive method. We have now bishop to d5 by Hakobyan, and now c takes d file, and finally the c file is open. And Magnus Carlsen has, I think, here a good game, although the evolution is about equal, but I like more these chances by white, especially because of the c-file attack, especially because of the beautiful bishop here, and especially because of the opportunity that the bishop will get new activities with the move bishop to h3. Then of course it will be on a better diagonal, because on this diagonal it's simply too blocked out by its own pawn structure. So with the move bishop to h3, I think we can activate the piece. And maybe queen to b5 was now a good choice for Hakobyan. Maybe even allow Magnus Carlsen to get with the rook on c7, but I'm not sure who would really accept a challenge like this, who would really allow Magnus Carlsen to get with the rook on the 7th rank in a blitz game. But actually this was maybe the way to go. This could be an interesting also choice for black, especially because of this opportunities here on the queen side with this 2 versus 1 situation. So Magnus played c takes d5 here. Hakobyan played knight to b7. Really also an interesting choice, because now the knight can jump on a beautiful square on c5. But now comes this idea, bishop to h3. Look at this, everything is lined up now against this bishop. This bishop on h3 becomes the best minor piece on the board. The queen is lined up, and then even in some lines the bishop can come on e6 and maybe pin the rook against the king. So here Hakobyan plays an interesting defensive idea, h6, because if you pick up the bishop, the pawn, bishop to h6, queen to h6, rook to h7, wins the game for black. Of course Magnus is not falling for this. He plays bishop to e3, queen to d8. The queen gets out of this mess, but still there is the weak square now on e6. So Magnus goes now with the move d4. He's not allowing the knight to jump on this beautiful square c5. We have now the move g5 by Hakobyan, queen to c2, attacking now the c7 weakness, and now g4. And this was now the crucial mistake, I think, here for black. Queen to e8, maybe slightly better, but still, look at this, d takes e5, we play d takes e5, a4. Still, I like my chances more here for white, especially because of the c-file attack, especially because of our bishop's activity. The knight is still flexible, has opportunities, so we can even play rook to d1, still a better game. But g4 is immediately bad, because after f takes g4, Hakobyan tried a logical idea, but it's simply not working, because after f takes e4, he's saying here, okay, finally I locked out now your bishop on h3. Your bishop on h3 is simply too powerful, so now with the pawn move g4, the bishop is blocked out. But Magnus Carlsen knows how to play the game. He plays now rook to f7, rook to f7, and now g5. He again liberates now this bishop. This bishop is coming now on e6, and here Hakobyan plays knight to d5, hopes maybe to reach something, of course, expecting maybe bishop to e6, but even if you play something like knight to f5, the problem is now bishop to f5, rook to f5 leads into complications after queen to e4. So still black would not solve all of this positional problems. Even in some lines, maybe even g6 is possible. So even this defensive idea, knight to f5, is not working. You maybe can play rook to f8. Now again we pick up the piece. Now we can even play rook to queen to c7, queen to c7. Look at this, rook to c7 is also an interesting idea here for white. So simply too much pressure all over the board here against black. After move g5, here Hakobyan tried, as we said, the move knight to d5. Here Magnus had some chances to even play the move bishop to e6, but probably he was annoyed by this idea, knight to e3. But still, this would be winning, I think, here for Magnus, because after queen to e4, queen to e8, look at this, the knight doesn't have any more squares to escape, so still we can pick up the rook, and now the knight, and with up the exchange, still white should be better. But okay, Magnus went with g6, so he didn't want to play the move bishop to e6. Actually, g6 is, when it comes to computer evaluations, even more accurate, because here Magnus allowed Hakobyan to get the rook on an active square on f3. Now Magnus plays queen to e4. Still, he doesn't want to play the move bishop to e6. Really wild stuff. Now after move rook to e3, queen to d5 comes with a check. He's attacking now the knight. After king to h8, this is everything forced here. Really stunning how Magnus is calculating everything in a fast time format. We have now queen to b7. Hakobyan thinks that he has solved all of the positional problems with the move rook to e2, but now rook to c7 is threatening the move c8 and trapping the queen. Hakobyan goes with the g8 and now queen to rook to c8. You have to cover yourself now with the move bishop to f8, and now comes the stunning rook takes f8. If queen to f8 happens, then we have the checkmate on h7. Rook to e1, trying to do something after bishop to f1, rook to f1. Now Magnus takes the rook with the rook. Of course, is not threatening to lose the rook anymore on f8, and here in this position Hakobyan resigns. So this is really brutal. This is really epic how Magnus sees this tactical sequences in such a fast time format. Really incredible game. So in my opinion, also an interesting strategic game here in the English opening. So okay, congratulations Magnus Carlsen for winning the title Tuesday. This was really beautiful chess event. I watched a couple of games yesterday. If you want to see more beautiful chess games like this, check out our commented chess games series here on my YouTube chess channel, and you can also check out my commented chess games played by computers, where we have analyzed some cool games played by Stockfish, Alpha Zero, Lila Zero, and many more. And if you like this content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos, and what to say, chess is the best, of course.